Hello, Cubs fans, and welcome to a brand new edition of Cubs on Tap. I am Ron Luce. I am joined by the great Mr. Rich Eberwine. Rich, we were talking a little bit in the pre-show. I think both of us could be better, but I'm still going to ask anyway. How you doing, my friend?
You know, I'm really glad we didn't do this right after the game ended because I needed a couple hours to blow off steam. You know, I was not in a good headspace.
No,
my gosh, that was a heartbreaking loss today that the Cubs served up.
A heartbreaking loss indeed, especially when you look at the whole picture of this series, which was you had an opportunity to win the series on Sunday. Yeah. You took care of business on opening night 2.0, right? With Steele on the mound, despite some struggles from the pitching, the offense explodes. They get the job done. Come back with a loss, but then you bounce back with a win. A heroic play by Dansby, a couple cool homers from Tucker and Shaw, first as a Cub for them respectively. And then today happens. And today was definitely, in my opinion, the biggest roller coaster game, because even though they trailed in the opening game of the series, I don't know about you, Rich, but
they kind of ran away with it.
Yeah, I wasn't as concerned. They got away with it early, and then the Diamondbacks tried to chip away, and they were like, no, we got this. This is put away. It felt like it was going to be that way on Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
Felt that way, especially after that Tucker homer.
Dude, I was literally jumping for joy when Tucker hit that home run. I was like, man, there was thoughts like, we got an MVP candidate on our team. The Cubs are so back. Yeah. We're gonna take this series against the Diamondbacks, starting off strong. And I feel like every pitch that Eli Morgan threw in that 8th inning, that joy was just getting bashed with a sledgehammer, just getting crushed, man.
Just literally with each passing one, it was like the vacuum got turned on a little more to suck a little bit of life out of your soul.
Literally.
I'm just oh God, when is this going to stop? Please stop the bleeding. Stop. He's already dead. That's how it felt.
Literally, it was like beating a dead horse. The Diamondbacks just were relentless in that inning. I was like, man, I didn't, I kind of feel like I'm always expecting the bullpen to have struggles at this point.
Sure.
Just after the first half of last year where it was just kind of the entire bullpen collapsed, a few key injuries, and then they needed to patch it together with mid-season additions. And now going into this year, it's it felt like, they kind of fixed it. They brought in a bunch of new guys. Eli Morgan is supposed to be one of those middle relievers that can be relied on. He had a fantastic year with the Guardians last year, and this was his second outing. I think he pitched in Japan, pitched pretty well in Japan too against the Dodgers.
He did.
And this time he just came in, served up 6 earned runs. It was tragic, man.
It really was. And I think to echo that too, though, I know the hyper focus is certainly on Eli Morgan, but it doesn't get any better with Caleb Thielbar, even though he got out of a great jam in the 7th, comes into the 8th and gets into trouble. And then immediately following him, there was no stopping the bleeding. It just became a tee-off session. And I think what makes things worse, too, in addition, Julian Merriweather was reportedly not available because he got up and warmed up in each of the last 2 games. So that sucks.
That's concerning, honestly. I get it. He was up and moving for those 2 games, but you didn't pitch in the games.
No.
He hasn't pitched since the Japan series, and he's unavailable because he was warming up 2 days in a row. I don't know. It seems a little concerning to me.
I agree. And maybe to take a little bit of a step out here really quick. And I do want to share a few comments because the comment section is always fun, especially on a Sunday night. I expect this one to get a little bit rowdy as we get closer to 9 o'clock. I need a drink after the series, as my dad says in the comment section. Yo to Daniel Berry Sports Highlights. And our friend Darren here says, toilet full of turds bullpen. Reach and pull one out and hope it doesn't stink as bad as the last one. Sorry, still venting. I think we're all still venting, but I will say this. Bobby tried to institute perspective. So for everybody that's curious, there is a Cubs on Tap 2.0, a new Cubs on Tap group chat. And I think it's going to be more active than ever with the additions of you, Rich, and Bobby. And Bobby made a fair point. It's early, right? Like if
Yeah.
these happen in August or September, there's a lot more weight to them. And sure, they still matter. But I going back to your point, Rich, had we done this immediately following the game, I think you and I would have probably just sat here and screamed at each other.
Yeah.
Like not at each other, but with each other for
Yeah.
like 40 minutes because those tempers were high. Having a few hours to step back, think about it a little bit. It does feel a little bit better of like, okay, well, maybe Merriweather wasn't ready because like these guys all had a rush to get ready because of the Japan series, right? Maybe these guys need a week or two, to fully recuperate because I think it was Scott from Iowa that said it in one of our most recent shows. He said that like it's for every hour of time difference that it is, it's like a full day when you get back to your normal time zone for your body to adjust. I don't know if that's accurate. I believe Scott though, because Scott is a wealth of information in the comment section on a regular basis. So like if that's the case, they're just getting over the jet lag from Japan, like right about now. Like, could some of that be just like body fatigue for these guys? Is it really messing with them that badly? You would make the argument like, well, the Dodgers didn't have to, feel that. Well, but they also played there last year. They learned probably a thing or two coming back and figuring out what they need to do to get ready. It was just really, really tough, Rich. And quickly here, a couple more comments. Jay says, council leaving in Morgan for too long. Fake ball coach here saying it was early. It was the same thing that was said last year. He says you cannot lose games like that. I think that's the overarching point that we're still a little upset about, right, Rich? Is you can't lose games like this, especially not when you have a lead that late in the game.
Yeah. After the Kyle Tucker home run, Sarah Langs on Twitter posted that they had a 97% win probability, which if you don't follow Sarah Langs, great follow on Twitter. She's a sports writer for MLB. And she also had the little tidbit that Ryan Nelson's single was the first that a pitcher has hit since the universal DH began in 2022, which it kind of just sums up the embarrassing aspect of this loss. It was just like, it was not fun, man. Like it was an embarrassing loss, like 97% chance. You expected to win that game after Tucker hit that bomb. And, your bullpen is going to struggle all the time. But after Pearson had like a shaky outing, you're like, okay, like, they got this nice lead padded. They got insurance runs from Suzuki and Tucker's home runs. Like we got the momentum. Like, let's just shut it down. We got 2 innings from the bullpen. Let's get it done. And it just went the complete opposite way.
It really did. I think too, on top of it, Torey Lovello burned his last pinch hitter off the bench in the 6th inning?
Mm-hmm.
So he was without options. That's why Ryan Nelson came off the bench and got a hit. Yeah. He literally drained his entire bench up to that point, trying to claw back into the game because the Cubs had such a commanding lead. 4 runs is a fairly commanding lead, I would say, especially going into the 7th inning. And then gone, evaporates. And I think that sucks on top of it too, because you look at the last couple games that they've played, especially open. Let me retract that for a second and ask you a question, sir.
Sure.
Does pitching Hodge and Presley and all those guys on Thursday really screw you over by the time you get to Sunday because they both had a pitch last night and then were subsequently probably not available today?
In hindsight, probably. I mean, it's but again, hindsight's 2020. Like, we can sit here and pick apart Craig Counsell's decision making, right? But it's like, did Craig Counsell know that Julian Merriweather wasn't going to be available today? Probably not. Was he available because of the Japan thing, or unavailable because of the Japan thing, or was it? Yeah. But was he unavailable because of some reason that people who are not MLB players like ourselves just don't know? Like, maybe it was something completely different. That's the thing with the bullpens for any MLB team. They're so fickle and unreliable. And it's been so long since the Cubs have had a good, reliable bullpen that I think us fans are just like, please, God, can we just get some reliability, some, just steady innings out of this pen? And hasn't happened so far, because yesterday, too, the bullpen almost blew it. Mostly Ryan Presley, who was supposed to be the savior of the bullpen this year, who was brought in via trade to lock down the ninth inning. It's definitely a concern moving forward. But again, like Bobby said, I'm glad Bobby sent those text messages in our group chat because it did kind of like temper everybody. Everybody was like, "This sucks. Like the Cubs bullpen is going to be crap again." And Bobby's like,
"This is ridiculous." Yeah.
Bobby's like, "It's the 6th game of the season. Like this happens to everybody." And I was like, "You know what? You're right, Bobby. That's a good point. Like things should smooth out as at some point, right? But
Definitely.
still, it's definitely a hard.
I will say
Dagger in the
this, that no, for sure. Dagger indeed. Fake ball coach says best bullpen in the second half of baseball last year. And while that is true, this bullpen is largely different than that group just from the end of last season. Outside of really Porter Hodge and I'm going to call him the ghost of Julian Merriweather because he really didn't get to pitch a ton because he was hurt for most of the year.
Yeah.
Who's back? Tyson Miller's on the IL. Jorge Lopez is gone. Pearson.
Yeah. Who has struggled in his initial
right
outing this year.
Right. So you have to ask, like, were we going to be able to really rely on these guys saying, well, they did it last year. Well, there's only really 2 guys that are going to pitch meaningful innings that are really back from last year. You know, I think Jorge Lopez was a guy that everybody was hoping was going to come back. And especially when you see the $3 million he got from the Nationals for one season, you wonder why the Cubs didn't make that move earlier in the year. But this is a whole different group. And I'll admit, outside of, you know, hoping that Pearson and Hodge are able to develop into high leverage arms, and you're hoping you can get even a fraction of what Presley was in his tenure with Houston. Outside of those moves, like there wasn't a ton of inspiration behind a lot of the moves. Like I know the Caleb Thielbar thing for me just soured me because I think he has what a almost 5 or even over 5 career ERA. And I get the Cubs like tinkering with guys and experimenting. And maybe, again, because baseball's a friggin' marathon, maybe we see these guys in 70 games and go, oh shit, maybe they were just working on stuff early in the season. And they've kind of settled into their roles and maybe they're not perfect, but like they can get the job done. But when your offense is clicking at a level that makes me very happy to start the season, especially because it feels like everybody's getting better at bats because of an addition like Tucker, and he's got 2 homers already through the first stateside series of the season.
That first game of the Diamondbacks series felt like I was watching a different team. Scoring 8 runs with runners in scoring position and 2 outs. I was like, man, who are these guys? This is not the Cubs' MO. But yeah, Tucker, I think to your point, is really a galvanizing piece of the lineup. Like today, he basically propelled them to a near win. You know what I mean? Just single-handedly with one swing of the bat. And, you know, like I said, had me jumping for joy. I was literally jumping up and down like, oh my God. But yeah, man, I don't know. I think what my takeaway is from this is, you know, the bullpen should smooth out at some point, right? Like it's very early, very small sample size. Hopefully, right? Fingers crossed. But I think also if the Cubs are in on this and if they're competitive, and by the time the trade deadline comes around, they're going to look for bullpen arms. Like they need to supplement this bullpen with veteran arms, with reliable arms, with probably another, like a legitimate closer, like a midseason closer addition would be awesome if they're in contention.
Definitely. Yeah, it's clear they're going to have to still do some things. A couple of quick comments kind of following up this argument because, Rich, I want to talk about some of the good from the series. You brought up Thursday, and that's kind of where I want to take this thing. But Darren says it is early, but his wish for the last 2 years is at least 2 bullpen arms, one being a true closer and an everyday solid bat. And of course, they still haven't added because of the addition of Tucker and losing Bellinger. And they never really used the Bellinger money. Cody Petit gets traded for cash. So you literally doubled down and traded Cody Bellinger for money. Like that's the pure reasoning at the end of the day when it's all said and done. My dad says here, it's their first series. The bullpen will work it out. Starters need to stay healthy. You know what? And hitters need to hit. Hitters did hit. The hitters did hit, though. That's the thing. Blew at least 27 save opportunities last year. League average. If they had a minimum league average, bullpen would have made the playoffs. Should have been a main focus and fix, as Darren kind of following up his original argument. And I agree. But I think that's the thing, right? Is this series. So before we talk about some good on Thursday, it is they did everything, right? They hit outside of really Saturday, like they hit. They hit when they needed to. They got runs. The bat swung the bat. The starting pitching, for the most part, I know Justin was a little rough on night one, but and Tyon got beat up on night two, but Shota looked phenomenal. Boyd looked really good today. Like the starting pitching, I think was okay, right? Like overall, I'm not outside of maybe Tyon's outing. I'm not really like, oh, what are we doing here? But it's because the bullpen was such the glaring, just like what is happening, that of course people are going to hyperfixate on it because everybody else largely did their job outside of one game. But you'll take 3 out of 4 every single time, especially from a team who is still very good and was a few games removed from a World Series title just 2 years ago, and you largely have the same kind of core from that team.
Yeah,
I would have felt a lot better.
That's the other thing too, is like the Diamondbacks have a very good lineup. They have, a guy who got MVP votes last year in Ketel Marte, Josh Naylor, and Lourdes Gurriel are excellent power hitters. Corbin Carroll has like superstar potential. This is not an easy lineup to pitch to, is the other thing to keep in mind here. And yeah, to your point, Matthew Boyd and Shota locked down. I mean, Boyd had a lot of traffic today, but Shota yesterday was fantastic. I mean, 7 innings, quality start in your first domestic outing of the year. Can't ask for much better than that.
Especially when you consider that he had a beautiful outing in Japan, some walks, but still 4 no-hit innings against the Los Angeles Dodgers. And you were pitching early because they weren't truly fully warmed up. So 7 innings for him right out the jump. I agree. Incredible stuff. And, I think the same thing for Boyd. And I'm sure the Cubs are tinkering some things with Boyd too, because they clearly like something that Cleveland did, but they thought, maybe he can do this just a little bit better and we'll work on it with him. So maybe he's still tinkering with some stuff too. So maybe that's some of the traffic on the bases, but I think he did a really nice job of largely keeping Arizona batters off balance all day, right? You saw Marte swinging at that ball at his feet. That changeup was working wonders at times. He was able to paint it on the corners, especially high up in the zone, kind of on the outer half. A lot of good stuff, I think, from Matt Boyd today. And you got 5 innings out of him. This is a guy that's been criticized for not being able to go deep in games. And for his first, significant start of the season, obviously we got to see him a little bit, leading up to this series. He looked really good over, a 5-inning start, and at least gave you the bare minimum of what you need to get at least out of your starters.
Yeah, I've done a lot of that criticism of Matthew Boyd this offseason. And, I was encouraged today. His stuff looked pretty nasty. And as long as he can limit that damage when he does walk batters, because he does work around the edges a lot. And I think that's going to result in a lot of walks this season and probably limit his innings a little bit. But as long as he can get out of that damage. And I think another thing that helped a lot this series in general was the Cubs defense.
Yes.
That was literally a game winner yesterday when Dansby Swanson made like a Herculean defensive play to win the Cubs a ball game. I mean, that's why his WAR is always floating around 5, because he's just a Gold Glove defender. So that was awesome. That's something to look forward to for the rest of the year for sure.
Oh, indeed. And even today, the Nico Horner stretch at first base was a hell of a play. And then PCA's throw out of Josh Naylor at third.
Yeah.
Another huge play over the course of this series defensively.
He threw out a guy at home today too.
Yeah.
Happened during that. I was busy like throwing things at the wall, but it did happen during that.
It did occur. Good defense did happen.
Yeah.
I completely agree with you, sir. The defense, certainly a bright spot. And really quick on Matthew Boyd, I was so fascinated when he was signed because that was the last name that was on my list. Like even for the sicko names, like I probably had a paragraph of sicko names on my list and then Matthew Boyd. Yeah. So it was like, whoa, what is this? And then I kind of went and dove into like the pitch mix and things like that. And I was like, oh, okay, I see what the Cubs like in him. Like this is a very Cubs front office type move, and they clearly must see something in him that they like, that they revamped. To your point, maybe some of that is living around the edges. Maybe they're trying to turn him into a lefty version of like a Kyle Hendricks. Maybe not necessarily he goes deep in games, but he's gonna pitch on the corners when he does give up contact. It's weak grounders on the ground. Let that defense behind him make good plays, and win with your gloves. That again, largely this Cubs team is built to win with the glove because of how good they are across the entire diamond defensively. But Rich, I have to appreciate the defense and the base running. That was kind of where I wanted to get a little bit earlier. You mentioned on Thursday night, lots of runners scoring with men in scoring position. But it's also nice when you got PCA at first base and a deep single, or because it becomes a double because it trickles deep enough into the outfield.
It is fun watching that guy run the bases. It's incredible.
It really is.
I mean, that is definitely a major asset to the Cubs this year. I mean, in addition to PCA and Horner, guys who have 30 stolen base seasons under their belts. PCA had 27 last year, close to it. The revamped bench, too, is kind of built for that. For the pinch running, base stealing situations, like John Birdie and Gage Workman are both guys who are more suited for Craig Counsell's makeup of a baseball team, I think. Can play, has a lot of position versatility and play solid defense across the diamond and have good speed on the base paths. So that is definitely another like win on the margins thing that I think the Cubs are going to be leaning on a lot. And we saw it a lot this series, which is encouraging for sure.
Absolutely. And Matt Shaw, right? I think the home run kind of stole the spotlight, I guess you could say, for the course of the series. His base running on Thursday was fantastic. It was cool watching number 4 Pete Crow Armstrong score, and then number 6 Matt Shaw coming right behind him. If they get more of that too, because like you said, the team's faster. Once you get Vidal Brujan back, that's a guy that can run really well and gives you some of that versatility and dynamic speed on the base paths. The Craig Counsell model is very true, because a season ago, what was probably once the Craig Counsell model, or at least partially of it, the Milwaukee Brewers were like the best team in baseball, runners in scoring position, right? That's why they win games, because that's how that team was built for so many years. If the Cubs can do it, that's going to make things certainly much better. Durance is here, off the wall positive, pissed off look on Nico's and Dansby's, and others when not coming through on an at bat, showing heart, not seen at the beginning of last year. So that's a piece of it too. The culture maybe of this team is a little different this year. Worst team in baseball. Statistically speaking, it's not wrong. It's not wrong. But certainly
we're already getting sell the team tweets on Twitter.
Are we? Oh, good. Do we want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. Why not?
Do we want to dive down that rabbit hole? All right, let's dive down that rabbit hole, because I think this is more for the people that need the agenda to yell at the clouds that this team's not built properly. I get mad about it because I am just always in this mindset as a numbers nerd and a money nerd that I pay attention to these things. I know Juice is that way as well. A couple of guys that are our co-hosts here are that way. Brooksgate via Forbes released my favorite list, and everybody knows what it was last year, and it's back. 2024 official revenue numbers for every team in baseball compared to their payroll and any luxury tax dollars on coming into 2025, and what percentage of the team's payroll comes out of that revenue. Of course, the Mets are number one. They're like 90%. It was the exact same way last year. Dodgers are up there. Toronto Blue Jays are up there as well. Phillies. Believe it or not, this Arizona Diamondbacks team is 5th in how they spend their money on players. An interesting thought. They're certainly not.
Corbin Burns' contract helped out a lot.
Definitely. And they're certainly not up there. I mean, they're the 11th highest team in terms of payroll, but only 19th in terms of total revenue. But then I have to really dig down this list. I find the Colorado Rockies higher. Granted, they have less revenue to far less payroll, but they're 18th in baseball. About 44% of their revenue goes to payroll. And then I look at the bottom, and 26th on this list is the Chicago Cubs, who only are ahead of Pittsburgh, Tampa, the White Sox, and the Marlins. Never a great list to be on.
The cheapest teams in baseball.
The cheapest teams in baseball. But you look at it and you say, well, the Pirates, 20th in revenue, 28th for the Rays, 29th for the White Sox, 27th for the Marlins. Their payrolls are low because their revenues are wicked low. The Cubs were the third highest revenue yet again in baseball this season to go at $584 million. Only to turn around and use $213 million of that on players, not going over the luxury tax as numerous teams ahead of them did. And, they were 14th in payroll, which is good for 36%. That's crazy. You have margin to spend more. What is holding Ricketts back in his break-even category? I know labor is an expense and people that work at the ballpark, and I respect that. But not to the point where you can't spend a little bit more.
Yeah.
What is it that's costing so much money?
I think it's the fact that he knows Chicago Cubs fans are going to come in droves to Wrigley Field no matter what. And we've seen that year and year again. Like they're always, they're always packing the house, and all of that attendance is buying concessions, and the concessions are very expensive, as you and I well know. A Bud Light costs like $14 at Wrigley Field.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, so I don't know. I think Ricketts, that's something that we were touching on during the preseason podcast that all of us did. Is
sure
the rubber is going to hit the road for Tom Ricketts as the owner of the Chicago Cubs in 2025, specifically after this year. I think we're going to see if he's going to be able to put his money where his mouth is, because Kyle Tucker is a no-brainer type of player to offer a 10-year contract to. One of the mega deals that these guys are asking for. And if you're lucky, you can get him down to like a $400 million contract, because if he has like a 30 home run, 100 RBI season, he can ask for like a $500 million plus deal, because he is that good. He can do everything. He can play Gold Glove defense. He has a ridiculous throwing arm. He has stolen base potential. He's got good speed on the bases, hits for power, hits for contact. Like, he is the guy that you should pay, and a guy that you somehow got on your baseball team and somehow got me jumping up for joy this afternoon after he hit a bomb into right field. He's the type of guy who can excite your fan base too. That's what I think we were touching on this right before we started, is like, there's a lot of Cubs fans who are, kind of demoralized by losses like this, and they need a player like Kyle Tucker on the team. And just having that financial commitment from the Ricketts after this year, I think would go a long way in like regaining this whole financial trust back, after I think the biblical losses comment by Tom Ricketts really stuck in a lot of people's craw, like myself included. It's time to put up, man. Like, you're making money hand over fist. You own a bunch of property around Wrigley Field. We know you're making money, so why don't you spend? You don't even have to spend like the Mets or the Dodgers. I would just like you to spend like the Phillies and the Padres. Maybe go over the luxury tax in a year like 2025, where you're able to compete, where the rest of the NL Central is dog water. Let's be honest. Like, to the point where if you did spend money, you would easily be favorites to win the division. Instead, you're slight favorites to win the division, and there's always the chance the Milwaukee Brewers just come out and beat you anyway, just because they're the Brewers.
I hope the Brewers losses continue, though. It was fun watching the Yankees take batting practice against them all weekend.
I wish the Yankees could play the Brewers every freaking day. That was
every single one, man.
Nothing made me happier than seeing the Yankees score 32 runs against the Brewers in 2 games. That was unbelievable.
Watching Nestor Cortez throw BP to his old team was so fun.
Dude, great addition by the Brewers this offseason. Excellent trade. Gave the Yankees the arguably the best closer in baseball, and you got Nestor Cortez, who gave up batting practice to the Yankees.
You got Nestor, though. You got him.
Yeah.
But Rich, going quickly back here to the dollars and cents speak. Triple R Bail Bonds here says that the Cubs have a phenomenal fan base, always show support no matter what. They're showing up and the merch and everything. He says it's time to go Dodgers money, no excuse. And to your point, Rich, maybe it's not even Dodgers money, but like Padres money, Phillies money, like somewhere up in that general frame of like, hey, put something out there. And Darren says Ricketts cry, pardon me, not Richard, not you, sir. Ricketts cry about barely breaking even year to year financially. Fails to mention like the Cubs franchise has grown over $2 billion in under 4 years. And if the value of a team, it only becomes value if you sell the team. But the point being is some of that value goes into your revenues are consistently growing. The Cubs are. They were a tick, I think, over 500 million last season, or they were like 520 maybe. $64 million you went up in 1 year. That's crazy. Like I know prices of shit's going up, but like that's bonkers, absolutely bonkers. And yeah, if you do commit, and I think that's the thing with the Kyle Tucker situation. If you commit that money, that's spending money to make money. Because to your point, you have that MVP caliber guy that any fan base can rally around. Is like, as long as he's in the lineup, we legitimately have a chance every day to win a ball game. That goes so much further. And again, the Cubs haven't had that since Chris Bryant was winning MVP awards now 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And even that after that fell off, right? You had one MVP season from him and they rode it to a World Series.
Yeah.
But Tucker has proven it over numerous seasons. And he might just be getting to the best baseball of his career, Rich. Being 28 years old, that's your metaphorical prime per se, especially in baseball. 28 to 32, you'd have even if you give him 10 years, 5 of those years are the best version of that player who last season was a 4-win player and only played half the year.
Worst case scenario, he DHs the last 5 years. Who cares? Yeah, and to your point, the making money or spending money to make money is like, how many Kyle Tucker jerseys you're going to sell if you actually give him a contract? I don't want to buy a Kyle Tucker jersey because right now, at this point, he's probably going to be a free agent after this year. And then when I look at that jersey a year from now, it's just going to make me sad and remember that my team doesn't like to spend money on good players. It's, I didn't buy a Cody Bellinger jersey for the same reason, because I'm like, he's on a 1-year deal. He's probably not going to be here for too long. And that was proven correct. That's another kind of facet to this is we were touching on this earlier, but the Cody Bellinger money was never reinvested into the team. They made an attempt to sign Alex Bregman, which while it was happening, it seemed like it was a legitimate attempt. Like the rumors, there was insiders favoriting the Cubs to land Bregman. But as time went on and more information about that came out, it was pretty clear that their offer was never, it was definitely considered, but it was not close. Like Bregman himself said, it was between the Tigers and the Red Sox. Yeah. The Cubs offer ended up being, I think, somewhere around $10 million of AAV less than the Red Sox offer, which is not a serious offer if you're Alex Bregman, right? Like, what, you're going to take a $10 million pay cut to go play for the Cubs on a not guaranteed deal for what? I don't know. What is the Red Sox deal that he has right now?
3 years.
Yeah.
3 years, $40 million per year. There's some deferred money in there too, right? So maybe players want the deferred money. I think that's the thing
I think that's accurate. Just look at what the Dodgers, Tanner Scott chose the Dodgers over the Cubs. There was deferred money in his contract, and then after that deal was complete and after the Bregman thing happened, Jed Hoyer came out and said that the team is not interested in deferring money. Well, you're handicapping yourself to sign good players then. If you don't want to defer money and if you don't want to offer large contracts that good players want, I guess we're just never going to sign good players then, because that's what players want in the current market.
100%. And on top of that too, Rich, I'm going to go in the spirit of tax season being currently going and coming to a screeching halt in about 2 weeks. These players like having the deferred money, which Tom Ricketts has come out explicitly said he does not have any interest in doing.
Yeah.
Because of what, $5 million between John Lester and Jason Hay, or $7 million between those two players of deferred money.
Guess what? Those contracts got you a World Series.
Right. And So you sit back and you go, well, Tom, what if these players want that? Because the more money you make, the more you pay in taxes currently. So if you defer that over a longer period of time, you pay less taxes every year. You're taking home more of that money if you're one of these players. And it also gives them guaranteed security long beyond their playing days. And then you also have to consider this. My little tax nerd piece of knowledge. I did taxes once upon a time in my life. As a baseball player, you pay state tax in every tax you play games in because you're paid on a game by game basis. So some games you are losing a lot of money to locality taxes. Guess what happens when you're retired and you're making that money deferred? Wherever you live is where you get taxed. Because in theory, they're paying you to do what you need to do. It's no longer a game by game thing. So you're not paying locality tax for everywhere. You're just paying the tax of wherever you reside. These guys get more money that way and more guaranteed security. That's their financial plan aspect of this, right? Like I think we all dehumanize players a lot as like, well, just take the money and run. And it's like, no, but like, if you can do it in a smart way where you're even better off, we did the same thing as people, like as individual people, right? You invest in your retirement and you tax plan and if you make big money and you can make more money on it, wouldn't you want to take that option than taking a huge chop off the top right away? Some guys want that. There's probably plenty of guys that are just like, yeah, just give me the money right now. This is fine. I'll live with it. I'll figure it out. I'll invest it on my own or whatever. I don't need it coming in later down the road. But I'm sure some of these guys want to do that. And literally you shut yourself off to maybe half the league of free agents potentially down the road, where they're not going to sign with you because you're not even going to think about deferred money for them, right? Maybe Bregman wanted that. Maybe not. Obviously, that Red Sox offer is insanely high.
Yeah.
But isn't that what happened with Scott? He got deferred money and he had roughly the same offer from the Cubs and the Dodgers. And he ultimately went with the Dodgers. So you wonder there, maybe that was important to him. And the way this bullpen was, it would have been nice to have a Tanner Scott in it over this weekend. Don't you love when we can tie everything into how we start a show, Rich?
Full circle, baby. Good stuff there.
Circle. Hey, my little financial nerd analysis. Quick comment here. Darren says smart with money players would definitely like deferred money, and that's just something to consider, everybody. When you're sitting around and you need something to ponder on, that's a fun little brain buster for everybody at home that's listening to this show. Rich, I feel like we covered every nook and cranny of the series, but I do want to give you the floor. Anything additional and final thoughts here before we go ahead and sign off?
I'm taking the loss with a grain of salt. I'm hoping that this is just like one of those things that will be few and far between. Like every team is going to have a bullpen collapse and lose in a heartbreaking way. That's just the way a 162 game season goes. So I'm taking that. I'm taking Bobby's advice, and I'm kind of just settling down a little bit. I'm going to just hope for the best. I think after these 3 games in not Oakland, we'll get them back to Wrigley Field, and hopefully we'll be up and running by then and, just go on a little run here. And if by the end of April, if you're floating around 500, that's honestly a dub because this is a tough schedule that they have in the opening month here. So
it really
that's kind
is
of what I'm hoping for right now.
I totally feel that. I think this series for me is all right. It is what it is. Yeah, that sucked. Hopefully they figure it out. And, we can kind of all go from there. Rich,
didn't lose the series. You split. That's
true.
Against Diamondbacks. That's a solid dub right there.
That is indeed a solid dub. Rich, why don't we go ahead, since we have the benefit of full hindsight, because as people may or may not have heard on our preview show, we are running 3 times a week this season. Confirmed, official, and it's going to be roughly the same every single time instead of like last year with our goofy schedule we did. Sundays, Tuesdays, Thursdays. Thursdays are going to be a lot of off-day shows, which will be fun because there's going to be a lot of rabbit holes and things like that. So I encourage people to tune into those shows. Those are going to be spicy leading you into your weekend every single weekend. Tuesdays, we'll get the little, halfway through a series update, and Sundays are largely going to be series recaps like today's was. But we have 3 coming up with the A's. Just quickly here for you, Rich. Monday, Cubs play at 9 o'clock Central Time. It'll be Ben Brown versus Estes on the mound for the Athletics. On Tuesday, same thing, 9:05 start time. It's Steele versus Severino, who Severino was very good his first time out for the A's.
Yeah, looked electric, honestly.
Did. And then on Wednesday, getaway day, it's a 2:35 Central Time game because then the Cubs are coming back off Thursday. Opener on Friday. I'm very excited about that. I'll for sure be down there. Are we going to get to see Rich Everwine at Wrigley Field?
Oh yeah, I think I'm going Friday and Saturday. So
Elect.
I gotta go secure that Cubs flannel on Saturday. But yeah, we need some magic against the Padres. The Padres are looking pretty good so far. But
Indeed,
yeah, should be fun.
It should be fun, but that getaway game will be Tyone versus Springs, who was their offseason addition from the Tampa Bay Rays. The lefty will throw. He looked pretty good too. The lefty, he will throw on Wednesday. Rich, for good old S&G, Cubs win the series. What are your predictions for the 3-game set with the A's?
I like it. I say 2 out of 3. Tyone's going to have a bounce back, I think. And then you got Justin Steele, who's arguably your best pitcher on the mound. Ben Brown, arguably your biggest X factor on the starting rotation. Very excited to see him get his first start of the year and hopefully against a Athletics team. But I honestly have a little bit of thump in that lineup. It's a little scary, but yeah, hopefully he gets a nice start in for his first start of 2025. I'm very high on Ben Brown this year.
Most definitely. He's going to be fun to watch. I'm super stoked to see what Ben Brown can do on Monday. I also think they'll win the series. They're going to lose one, and my gut tells me it's probably going to be that last game against Springs. I think Tyone bounces back, but I think that's just a close game. Maybe you can get to Severino, but I still even think that's probably going to be a pitcher's duel as well. We've got a sweep call from my dad in the
Love it
comment section. And Darren says, get Wix's bag packed and up now. Maybe. Who knows? It'll be interesting to see what they do in terms of any roster stuff. I would largely think they're not bringing anybody up because of being on the West Coast until, probably you get home.
Back home. Yeah.
We'll have to wait and see.
We'll blow that bridge up when we get there.
Indeed we will. Rich, before we get out here, I want to remind everybody, Cubs on Tap, one of 2 shows of the On Tap Sports Network covering the Chicago Cubs. Tune in over with our friends over at the Dingers podcast at Dinger Cubs on the socials. They are going to still continue to run all year long on Mondays. We will again run Sundays, Tuesdays, Thursdays. Follow us at Cubbies on Tap. I am at Loose on Tap. Rich, you are at Rich_Ebbs, EBS.
And follow us on Facebook. We have a brand new Cubs on Tap Facebook page as well that we're getting up and running. Go follow us on Facebook if that's your social media app of choice.
Indeed. Follow us on Facebook, on X. Subscribe here to the YouTube at On Tap Sportsnet. You can follow those accounts on all social media platforms as well for the main account. And then everybody knows the drill. Bulls, Bears, Blackhawks. We got it all. And, of course, Cubs fans, you guys have friends at like the Southsiders, and so do we. They can check out our friends over at Sox on Tap, ontapsportsnet.com, and at On Tap Sportsnet on the socials. The On Tap Sportsnet, we're going to check out what's on tap in Chicago sports. Rich, this was a blast. I wish we were talking about a series victory, but nonetheless, it was good talking baseball with you, my friend, after a split. And what do you say? We get out of here the way we know how it comes on tap.
Let's do it, Ron.
Fuck the Cardinals. And let's go, Cubbies.